Kunan Gurian was born blind, so he did not understand what people meant when they said they could see. Sitting alone inside his family's dim residence, he asked what sight was. The adults explained that it allowed them to recognize colors and shapes, but those words meant nothing to him. His family tried to comfort him by saying his blind eyes were a proud scar inherited from the ancient hero Histoire. Kunan only heard people pitying him and wondered why he should feel proud of something that kept him dependent on others. His thoughts were interrupted when his attendant announced that a new magic tutor had arrived. Kunan had little interest in learning magic even though he possessed a water crest. He believed no spell could change the fact that he needed someone to guide him everywhere. Iko led him to his lesson, where the new tutor introduced herself as Genie and asked what he could already do. Kunan could produce a small sphere of water about the size of an eyeball. That comparison suddenly changed everything. If water magic could reproduce an eye's size and shape, perhaps it could eventually create an eye that worked. For the first time, Kunan found a goal that belonged to him. He decided to study magic, construct his own eyes, and discover what the world looked like. Kunan's new purpose changed the way he experienced daily life. During breakfast, he no longer swallowed food without caring what it was. He examined his sandwich and asked Iko about every ingredient, smell, and texture. She identified lettuce, mustard, and different fruits, sometimes teasing him by presenting a plum as though it were an apple. The variety occasionally overwhelmed his nose, but Kunan kept asking questions because he wanted to understand the objects that sighted people recognized naturally. Iko was pleased that he had begun eating more kinds of food, and preparing meals became more enjoyable now that he showed genuine curiosity. Kunan next asked his academic tutor to teach him about Histoire Huglia, the hero connected to his blindness. She warned that the story might be painful, but he wanted to know the truth. Long ago, Histoire defeated the Demon King but lost an arm and a leg in the battle. Afterward, some descendants were born missing a limb or the light in their eyes. People called those conditions the hero's scar. Kunan refused to let that name define him. His water, crest, and magical power belonged to him, not to an ancient hero. If magic could create water, he would use that power to make an eye. Kunan began practicing constantly, but his early attempts left him exhausted. He realized that stronger magic required knowledge, stamina, and physical strength, and he lacked all three. Iko reminded him that he was only 7 and still had time to grow. Kunan refused to wait when even beginner magic could make him collapse. Iko agreed to increase his food gradually because suddenly eating too much would harm him. Since running or walking alone was difficult, she suggested sword swings to train his arms and shoulders safely. Kunan accepted and asked for a skilled instructor. Before Iko left to arrange it, he thanked her sincerely for helping him pursue his goal. Iko was surprised by Kunan's gratitude because she had overheard his complaints during training and knew how frustrated he felt. Still, she understood that his attitude had changed. A sword instructor soon taught Kunan to swing by moving his shoulder, elbow, and wrist in the proper order. The exercise was difficult, but it built the body he needed for magic. When Genie arrived for the next lesson, she was amazed that he had added sword practice solely to improve his spells. Although tired, Kunan refused to rest and reviewed his basic water magic. He formed several controlled spheres around himself, showing progress far beyond what Janie expected from the gloomy child she had first met. Elsewhere, Princess Malika was told that her carriage was ready to visit her fiancé. She dreaded the meeting because the Kunan she remembered always looked miserable, and she feared he disliked their engagement. The king had arranged the match, so she accepted it as a royal duty connected to Kunan's heroic bloodline. During the journey, Malika wondered what he liked, and how she should spend time with a boy who claimed he could do nothing and go nowhere. When she reached the Gurian residence, Kunan greeted her himself. His cheerful and playful manner was so unexpected that Malika briefly failed to recognize him. Kunan explained that he had discovered something he loved. He now loved magic. He showed Malika a clear water sphere, and she admired the beautiful globe reflecting the world around it. Kunan apologized for always making her worry during their earlier meetings. This time, he asked her to listen because he had many enjoyable discoveries to share. Malika spent the visit hearing about his lessons, experiments, food, and new ambitions, instead of sitting beside a silent, hopeless boy. By sunset, she understood that Kunan had truly changed. She returned home after a pleasant meeting, while Kunan was left thinking about how differently she had treated him. Kunan asked Iko why Malika had offered him her hand when she had never done that before. Iko said it was because he had begun acting like a sincere gentleman. Kunan immediately asked her to teach him how to behave in a way worthy of the princess. Iko added noble manners and charming conversation to his education. Meanwhile, Genie faced a more serious problem. Kunan could now produce 7 beautiful water spheres at once, something even she could not have done at his age. His beginner spell was approaching its completed form, and his growth was so rapid that she feared she would soon have nothing left to teach him. Instead of introducing dangerous intermediate spells, Genie taught Kunan to analyze his existing water magic. A single sphere involved several separate functions. The spell created water, held it in the air, and maintained its shape. Those properties could be divided further into temperature, viscosity, composition, color, shine, scent, and taste. Genie created 2 spheres, one cold and one warm, and let Kunan feel the difference. She explained that changing small properties gave a magician's work originality. Kunan immediately copied the idea by producing water with a plum flavor. Genie was frustrated by how quickly he used a lesson she had only just demonstrated, but Kunan promised to master even the difficult changes. One obstacle remained. Kunan understood shape, scent, and flavor, but he did not know color. Without understanding color, he could not completely transform his water or finish the magical eyes he imagined. He told Genie that he would still succeed because he wanted to see everything in the world. Later, while Iko prepared drinks, Kunan experimented with a water sphere and suddenly sensed something unfamiliar. He thought he might be seeing. Iko became emotional, but Kunan warned her that it was not normal sight and that he did not yet understand what information his magic was giving him. Iko tested the new ability with red and green apples. Kunan could distinguish them at close range, especially when he touched them, but he did not know which sensation matched which color name. He first identified the wrong apple, then corrected himself after Iko explained the labels. Learning that a so-called green apple was pale green confused him even more. Once he understood the naming, Iko asked him to count the fruit. Kunan correctly found 3 red apples and 2 green ones. His range remained narrow, yet the result proved that his magic now allowed him to identify color. Iko reported Kunan's breakthrough to his father. The ability became clearer when an object was close or in direct contact with him. Because Kunan could trace the different color of ink with his fingers, he might eventually learn to read. He was already absorbed in picture books and illustrated reference books, although written characters would take more practice. His father considered moving him back to the main residence. Kunan had originally lived separately because he hated burdening others, and because the arrangement reduced the strain on his mother. Iko argued that changing his environment now could interrupt his determined progress. His father agreed to wait and entrusted Kunan's care to her. Kunan immediately prepared another experiment before Genie's next visit. He wanted his tutor to witness his new ability, and Iko suggested making the demonstration dramatic. Kunan created a large magical display in the garden so the color would feel stronger. Iko described it as a beautiful red, and Kunan enlarged it until he could sense the color clearly. For the first time, he understood what red meant. News of his progress had already reached the family, and they arrived in the garden just as Kunan proudly examined the enormous red creation. The display looked disturbingly similar to a pool of blood spread across the grounds. Iko casually told Kunan that human blood was red too, making the scene even more alarming. The adults panicked, someone nearly fell, and the cheerful experiment dissolved into chaos. Kunan's father angrily punished those responsible for creating such a reckless spectacle. Genie could only stare at the result and wonder how far this extraordinary child might climb. Kunan had begun with one tiny sphere and a desperate wish to understand sight. Now his rapid growth made Genie believe he might someday reach the title held by the world's greatest water magician, the Blue Magician. Kunan continued studying both academics and the behavior expected of a noble gentleman. His tutors were pleased with his answers, while Iko encouraged him to become charming enough to suit Princess Malika. Kunan eagerly practiced elegant conversation, although his exaggerated compliments often left the adults unsure whether to laugh or correct him. Before visiting his father, he also showed Iko another magical experiment. By surrounding water with an extremely durable and flexible membrane, he had created a soft object with an unusually smooth texture. Iko immediately wanted to sleep on it like a bed, and Kunan admitted that a magical bed was already one of the uses he was considering. On the way to the main residence, Kunan wondered why his father had summoned him and whether the family was still angry about the garden incident that had looked like a sea of blood. Iko admitted that her suggestion to make the demonstration dramatic had gone too far, but neither of them truly disliked the result. At the residence, the family servant Balin welcomed Kunan. His older brother was startled when Kunan walked without holding anyone's hand. Kunan explained that his magic now helped him sense much of his surroundings. His mother and father then received him in the sitting room, where the reason for the meeting was finally revealed. Kunan's father had heard that he had already completed the academic material taught at the noble school. He asked whether Kunan would consider attending the school in person. Kunan refused at first because his blindness would make everyone around him uncomfortable, and magic was more important to him than school. His father respected that goal, but explained that Kunan was officially registered as a student because noble children were expected to attend. The king had granted him special permission to remain absent, yet ignoring noble duties could damage Malika's standing in society because she was his fiancée. Once Kunan understood that his decision might hurt her future, he agreed to go. Kunan did not need to attend for years. He only had to pass 5 advancement examinations to receive an official graduation qualification. His older brother and Malika were also preparing to graduate, so they would be at school with him. Kunan's mother immediately began planning new clothes, shoes, a stylish coat, and accurate measurements. His father warned that other royal family members might approach Kunan or Malika, but the older brother promised to stay nearby. When Kunan later spoke with Malika, she happily offered to guide him. Kunan joked that boys who admired her might become jealous, only to learn that she could count her admirers on one hand. He decided that bringing a newly improved cane would still be wise. When departure day arrived, Kunan appeared in a fur-trimmed coat, formal clothes, a dark mask over his eyes, and a polished cane. His theatrical behavior was so different from the child his family remembered that even his brother questioned whether Kunan had always been this strange. Before boarding the carriage, Kunan cast his basic water spell around its wheels. The controlled water absorbed the vibration, allowing the carriage to travel with almost no shaking. His brother was amazed, while Kunan simply saw another practical use for magic, and began thinking that such inventions might help him find work someday. As the carriage moved farther from home, Kunan's brother asked whether he felt afraid. Kunan admitted that he had caused his brother years of worry, especially after an accident left him injured and made his brother blame himself. Kunan assured him that those days were over. In the past, he had sometimes wished he could disappear, but discovering magic had given him a fierce desire to live. He declared that he would survive no matter what happened, and live so long that he would almost feel guilty toward the rest of humanity. His brother laughed with relief, though he still could not believe how completely the once despondent Kunan had changed. Kunan sensed the school before seeing it, because countless voices and human presences filled the area. Malika met him outside, and he greeted her with an elaborate compliment about hearing her beautiful voice so early in the morning. They teased each other about their clothes. Then Kunan admitted that the enormous crowd would have frightened his former self. For a moment, he asked to take the role of a girl, so Malika cheerfully became the gentleman and offered him her hand. Their playful exchange drew attention as they entered the grounds, but it allowed Kunan to move forward without retreating from the unfamiliar noise around him. A new teacher named Cast had been assigned to guide Kunan. She had heard rumors about the timid blind child born with the hero's scar and worried that an inexperienced teacher like her might not manage the responsibility. Instead, she met a confident boy who introduced himself as Kunan Gurian and performed a curtsy because he had temporarily declared himself a beautiful girl. Cass could not understand why he had added the word beautiful, while Malika and Kunan's brother treated the behavior as normal. After they left for their own activities, Cass led Kunan through the school. Students whispered that he was the first child with the hero's scar born in 100 years, while others mocked his size, appearance, and blindness from a distance. In a classroom, Cass explained the 5 examinations Kunan needed to pass. Ordinary students completed one test and then received preparation time before attempting the next. By special order from Kunan's father and the king, all of his tests would be concentrated into a much shorter period. Kunan openly described the two men as close friends who had pressured the school and apologized for the favoritism. Cass tried to ignore the political implications, but Kunan kept making dangerous jokes about their family's long relationship. Even during the tests, he talked almost without stopping and repeatedly pulled the nervous teacher back into his conversation. His casual behavior made Cass expect poor results. When she examined his papers, however, she found correct work across the subjects and knowledge so specialized that it went far beyond the normal graduation level. After the examinations, Kunan reunited with Malika and his brother to find lunch. Their quiet plan was interrupted when a group of students gathered around Malika. At their center was her older brother, Prince Lyle Huglia. He questioned whether a small blind boy like Kunan had truly received the king's blessing and mocked the hero's scar as an unsupported legend. Malika became tense and remained silent before her brother's authority. Kunan had been enjoying the school until that moment, and he refused to tolerate anyone who troubled her. Before he could act alone, his own older brother stepped between them and asked whether the prince had business with Kunan. Lyle ordered Kunan's brother to remain silent because he had not been given permission to speak. The students around the prince repeated his insults, even calling him the brother of a pillbug. Kunan was more confused by the ridiculous nickname than frightened by the royal confrontation. When the argument threatened to escalate, his cane released a bright magical effect that startled everyone nearby. A teacher reminded the group that social rank was not supposed to matter inside the school and asked them to settle the dispute peacefully. Kunan then turned the prince's own words and awkward behavior against him until Lyle became flustered and left with his followers. With the obstacle gone, Kunan calmly returned to the far more important question of what to eat. At lunch, Kunan chose a hamburger and asked Malika who the rude student had been. She reluctantly explained that Lyle Huglia was her older brother and the first prince. Kunan could hardly believe it. In his mind, an older brother should treasure his younger siblings, just as his own brother had always cared for him. Malika wished that were true in her family. Kunan looked at his brother and sincerely said how grateful he was that this man was his brother, once again leaving him amazed by Kunan's transformation. While his companions worried about how to report the confrontation to their father, Kunan enjoyed the best hamburger he had ever eaten. They could only hope that the remaining examinations would pass without another incident as a serious-looking student watched from the school corridor. After Prince Lyle left the dining hall, Kunan and his companions discussed why the prince had confronted them so aggressively. Malika explained that Lyle was the 6th prince while she was the 9th princess, so she normally stood below him in the royal order. Her engagement to Kunan had changed that balance. Kunan carried the hero's scar, was becoming a recognized magician, and had finally appeared in public. As his reputation rose, Milika's position in noble society rose with it. Even without those political benefits, she was genuinely glad Kunan was her fiancé, and he felt the same. Kunan considered apologizing to Lyle, but everyone immediately warned him that another meeting would probably create more trouble. Before the final examination, Kunan continued Janie's assignment to explore magical properties through touch. She asked him to feel different objects and reproduce their textures in his water spheres. A sphere that felt like an apple was only the beginning, and Kunan began collecting more examples from everything around him. When he met Malika at school, he dramatically mourned that it was their final day together there, only to stop when she reminded him that school merely ended in the evening. For the last test, Kunan would finally join a normal classroom, rather than work alone with Cast, giving him his first real experience among a large group of students. Cast promised that she would still watch over Kunan even in the crowded room. Their private examinations had made them surprisingly comfortable with each other because Kunan had spent so much time talking. He had even learned that she became a teacher after following a man she liked, only for him to fail his examination while she found employment. Milika's classmates then asked to meet her fiancé. Kunan introduced himself as Kunan Gurian, Milika's fiancé and the younger brother of the older Gurian student. He confessed that he had worried Milika and his brother had no friends because nobody had approached them. Milika explained that she had asked her friends to leave them alone so she could enjoy her limited time with Kunan. Kunan was relieved to learn that both Milika and his brother had friends, even though he personally believed a person could survive alone. Their conversation ended when everyone was called to the final examination. Lyle initially acted as though a teacher could wait for him, but even a prince would not be excused for arriving late. In the classroom, students whispered about the sixth prince and his repeated problems. Lyle heard their hidden criticism and became angry that nobody would speak honestly to his face. When Kunan noticed him, he calmly introduced himself again as Malika's fiancé and said he was glad they could finally exchange a proper greeting. Kunan seized Lyle's hand and refused to release it. He cheerfully called himself the prince's future younger brother, compared Lyle to a snapping turtle despite never having seen one, and complimented his voice and face through touch. Lyle demanded permission before Kunan spoke or grabbed him, but the blind boy only held tighter and wished he could stare at the prince's supposedly dignified face. Malika laughed because she had never seen her brother panic and struggle so openly. Lyle denied being flustered, then finally acknowledged Kunan's greeting simply to make him let go. The strange encounter left the prince red-faced and stunned, while Kunan thanked him with complete satisfaction before the teacher restored order. At sunset, Cast announced the students who had passed the final examination. Kunan, Milika, and Kunan's older brother all earned their graduation qualifications, and the three celebrated together. Kunan thanked Cast and the other students for making his brief school experience enjoyable. Cast privately thought he was strange but exceptionally talented. Before leaving, Kunan even tried to introduce his single older brother as a possible match for her, making his brother complain that Kunan had learned far too much about the teacher during an examination. Lyle and his followers departed separately, but the school chapter ended with Kunan officially graduating rather than remaining only a student on paper. Back at the family estate, Kunan resumed magic practice with Genie. She ordered him to divide a water sphere into 10 smaller pieces, color them green, and alter their texture. Kunan went further by adding shape and temperature as well, producing multiple variations at once. Genie watched the display in silence because it confirmed what she had feared for some time. During tea in the garden, Kunan assumed she wanted to discuss a graduation dinner and offered to invite her like a proper gentleman. Genie said the subject was different. She asked him to prepare himself because she intended to reveal a truth that would change their relationship. Kunan jokingly guessed that Genie might be a goddess of the night sky returning to the divine world. The real truth was simpler and more painful. Genie had nothing left to teach him. She had only been qualified to teach harmless beginner magic, and she had already given him everything within her range. Kunan now controlled magical power more skillfully than she did, and the moment he learned new spells, he would surpass her completely. Genie admitted that this had been true for a long time. Many of her recent lessons and unusual assignments had been delaying tactics created because she did not know how to keep guiding him. Kunan answered that those desperate tricks had expanded his magic more than Genie understood. She had been the one who compared his first water sphere to an eyeball, giving him the goal that pulled him out of despair. Even her improvised lessons had taught him how a magician should think. Genie reminded him that inventing endless tricks had been difficult, and that she had accepted a high salary while having less and less real work. Kunan offered to ask his father for even more money, but that only made her feel worse. She insisted that he needed a far more accomplished magician, because remaining with her would prevent him from reaching his true potential. Kunan begged Genie to keep deceiving him and inventing more tricks, because he wanted her to remain his teacher. He argued that creating so many useful lessons from desperation was itself a genuine talent. Genie still refused. The magical creatures and complex water forms appearing around them proved that Kunan had already advanced far beyond her. Their separation hurt both of them, but Jeannie believed ending the lessons was the only responsible decision. As she left the estate, she reminded herself that Kunan had failed, practiced, and overcome obstacles many times. If her young student could keep moving toward the title of Blue Magician, then she could not surrender to her own limitations either. Soon afterward, Kunan learned that his academic tutor, Lady Clara, had also left because he had completed the noble school curriculum and officially graduated. She had avoided a direct farewell because she feared she would cry. Kunan decided to send her a thank you letter. Iko then suggested asking Clara whether she knew a tall, well-paid male servant between 18 and 25 with good hearing, since Iko still wanted to marry someday. Kunan protested that Jeannie and Clara were already gone and that losing Iko would leave him unable to cope. He compared himself to a lonely rabbit and firmly refused to include Iko's request in the letter. Kunan's father accepted that a new magic teacher was necessary, but finding someone qualified was difficult. Kunan's brother recalled hearing students praise a powerful and beautiful magician named Xianli Finral. The family recognized the name immediately because Xianli was a court-ranked magician. Such magicians served directly under the crown, and ordinary status or influence could not command them. Their movements were restricted, contact with outsiders was rare, and even Kunan's father could not simply invite one to the Gurian estate. Kunan nevertheless decided that Xianli sounded like the teacher he wanted. Kunan proposed accompanying his father to the royal palace, becoming conveniently lost, meeting Xianli by chance, receiving help, and somehow convincing the magician to become his teacher. His father pointed out that a plan built around somehow was neither precise nor likely to succeed. Kunan confidently claimed a 90% success rate, while everyone else considered it below 10%. His mother supported him and pressured her husband to help. Unable to resist her, Kunan's father finally agreed to ask the king, though he warned Kunan not to expect anything. At the royal palace, Kunan's request was discussed as an unprecedented attempt by an apprentice-level child to seek instruction from a court magician. Friendship with the king could not override the rank, authority, or independence attached to that position. Yet the royal family had already taken an interest in the small magician. Malika in particular was deeply devoted to him, and Kunan's unusual talent could no longer be ignored. As reports about him reached the palace, a powerful white-haired magician continued reading in a secluded chamber, while the name Gurian entered the conversation around her. Kunan traveled with his father after receiving permission to meet the royal magicians. His father explained that influence alone had not created this opportunity. A court magician had personally become interested in Kunan and might consider arranging a new tutor if their meeting went well. During the journey, Kunan demonstrated one of his latest creations, a small cat formed entirely from water. It had begun transparent, but he could now make it white or patterned and hoped to reproduce a real cry someday. His father adored the creature but refused to keep a living cat at home because one might circle Kunan's feet and make him fall. Kunan insisted he was stronger now, then repeated Iko's strange advice about nobles keeping cats outside, leaving his father unsure whether they were still discussing animals. At the royal grounds, Kunan and his father were welcomed by Raisha Hulia, the second princess. Kunan immediately recognized her as Milika's older sister and greeted his future sister-in-law with his usual theatrical charm. Risha had already heard many stories about him from Malika. She was distracted by the adorable black cat beside them until Kunan's father explained that it was only water magic. Raisha was impressed that the artificial animal looked convincing enough to fool her. Kunan's father then left to greet the king, while Risha offered to guide Kunan to the tower where the royal magicians worked. Kunan planned to return alone later because he also wanted to meet Malika for dinner. As they crossed the palace, Kunan immediately tried to discuss advanced magical theories, forcing Raisha to stop him because the subject was too complicated to explain while walking. Instead, she described the royal family. Huglia currently had 7 princes and 10 princesses. Unlike kingdoms where succession automatically belonged to the first prince, their order could change according to achievement and ability. Risha had abandoned any claim because she wanted to become a magician, but she warned that Malika could still become involved in those political struggles. Kunan sensed the enormous amount of magic gathered inside the distant tower, then created thin layers of ice beneath his shoes, so he and Risha could slide through the corridor faster. Before joining him, she hurriedly warned him not to accept recruitment, surrender research rights, or sign anything without approval. The ice became far faster and harder to control than either of them expected. Kunan and Risha raced through the palace while servants, guards, and knights scrambled out of their path. Risha repeatedly shouted for Kunan to stop, but neither could slow down properly. The experiment ended only after the commotion drew the palace knights, and Kunan was detained for causing trouble. News quickly reached the royal magician's office that a child magician had been caught. When Kunan was finally brought inside, he politely introduced himself to Randaman Akhtar, the director overseeing the royal magicians. The concentration of power around the director was so intense that Kunan immediately understood he was facing someone far beyond ordinary magicians. Randaman asked about the magical crest on Kunan's left shoulder. He explained that crests belong to 7 types, including fire, water, earth, wind, light, darkness, and a 7th special category, with 5 ranks for each. Kunan's water crest had 2 stars, the 2nd rank from the bottom, and statistically the most common level. Risha also possessed a 2-star wind crest. Kunan sensed that Rondamon was different because his magical power felt far denser. He compared himself and Risha to ordinary cheese while calling the director a carefully aged blue cheese. Rondamon laughed at the unpleasant comparison and revealed that his crest had 4 stars. Still, he stressed that rank mainly indicated total magical capacity. What a magician learned and how hard that person trained mattered more than the number of stars. The conversation was only the introduction. Rondamon announced that the enjoyable part would now begin because he wanted to test Kunan personally. Several royal magicians gathered outside, already curious about the blind child with the hero's scar, who had troubled an experienced knight. If Kunan passed, Rondamon would consider the request for a suitable instructor. One magician produced a sphere of water, and Rondamon gave Kunan a deceptively simple challenge. Kunan had to use his own water spell to steal control of water created by another magician. The concept surprised him because neither he nor Genie had ever considered taking possession of someone else's magic. Kunan remembered that his spell could not only create water but also manipulate water that already existed. He reached for the other magician's sphere and carefully tested the resistance between their powers. At first, the foreign water felt unfamiliar, but Kunan continued separating and drawing pieces toward himself. The observing magicians became increasingly excited as bubbles broke away and moved under his control. Even taking a single portion was more than they had expected from a child. Kunan finally understood that advanced magicians could reveal possibilities that had never occurred to him or Genie. For the first time, he experienced what royal-level magic and instruction could offer. Rondamon praised Kunan, and the other magicians immediately began arguing over who should keep him. One man asked whether Kunan could be given to him, only to be attacked by his colleagues, who reminded him that he could barely manage himself and had recently been rejected by a woman. Kunan ignored their chaos and asked whether he had passed. Rondamon wanted to continue because everyone was having too much fun. Kunan demonstrated the highly durable water sphere covered in a flexible membrane. The magicians imagined sleeping on it and using it to absorb falls. When Kunan explained that increasing its elasticity could launch someone as high as the 2nd floor of the castle, they eagerly wanted to try it. Rondamon stopped them before their enthusiasm prevented Kunan from ever going home. Kunan said he had promised to dine with Malika that evening, but the test continued with one final creation. When Risha asked whether he could make creatures other than cats, Kunan formed a human-shaped water doll. Its movements were still imperfect, yet he explained that further control might let it imitate normal human motion or perform actions a person could never do. He had even tried making one fly, although the result had been unpleasant. The royal magicians demanded a demonstration. The flying doll appeared across the palace grounds and caused another disturbance, earning the group a 2nd reprimand that day. Even so, Rondamon was delighted. He promised to take responsibility for finding Kunan a magic instructor without forcing him into a political faction. When Rondamon asked about Kunan's future goal, Kunan answered without hesitation. He wanted to create functioning eyes with magic. The royal magicians found the ambition difficult, strange, and fascinating, which only strengthened their interest in him. By the time Kunan left the tower, evening had arrived. His father had already heard 2 reports about his son's misconduct in a single day and demanded an explanation. Risha tried to accept part of the blame, but Kunan refused to hide behind her. His father taught him that magic was power and its user always carried responsibility. Following another person's suggestion did not excuse harming someone or damaging property. Kunan had to refuse dangerous orders and accept responsibility whenever he used his strength. Kunan understood and apologized sincerely. Kunan suddenly realized that he was late to meet Malika. Risha said arriving sweaty and breathless would not suit a gentleman, then proposed combining their magic to reach her quickly. Kunan created a large buoyant water platform while Risha used wind to propel it through the air. Kunan hesitated because he had promised that Malika would be the first girl with whom he floated or flew alone. He also warned that Risha's future fiancé might misunderstand, but she said she had no fiancé and ordered him aboard. The combined spell successfully carried them over the palace. Unfortunately, Risha failed to reduce their speed and altitude gradually, and they crashed hard upon landing. The soft water cushion protected them, proving the idea could work, but both admitted that much more testing was necessary. The crash earned Kunan his 3rd reprimand of the day, and he apologized again beside Risha. Elsewhere, Malika happily selected a color for her evening clothes because it was one Kunan would like. Her attendants wondered what kind of boy could make the princess so excited. After the reckless flight, Risha was also criticized for forgetting the self-control expected from royalty and encouraging a child to join her experiment. Kunan's first day among the royal magicians had produced new knowledge, a promise of help, 3 scoldings, and 1 successful but extremely rough flight before his long-awaited dinner with Malika. At the royal residence, Malika anxiously prepared for her first dinner outside with Kunan. Her attendants tried to calm her until word arrived that the young Gurian had reached the entrance, Kunan greeted her beneath the night sky and said the moon must be beautiful even though he could not see it, because this was their first dinner together. At school, he had once played the princess while Malika acted as the gentleman, but tonight he promised to escort her properly. He offered his hand and called her his princess, leaving Malika blushing as they entered the waiting carriage and traveled to the restaurant. During dinner, Kunan toasted Malika's bright blue eyes and elegant dress. He told her about meeting her older sister Risha and the royal magicians, especially the director, whose dense magical power he had compared to blue cheese. He had passed their test, although he still did not know who would become his next teacher. Kunan mixed extravagant compliments with strange comparisons, calling Malika's features perfect and describing her stories as more attractive than everything he had learned at the palace. Even when he called the meat refreshing, Malika could not help enjoying his unusual company. Their attendants quietly noticed how genuinely happy the princess looked beside him. Kunan said an evening like this felt almost too wonderful for him. If marrying Malika meant sharing such moments every day, then he could hardly wait for the future in which they walked together. His open declaration deeply moved her. After the dinner ended, Malika remained awake, thinking about the boy, while one of her attendants concluded that Kunan Gurian was far more impressive than expected. Back at his own residence, Kunan shut himself in his room to record everything he had learned at the palace. Iko eventually dragged him into the garden because sunlight and outdoor activity were important for a growing child. While Iko worked near a water tub, Kunan asked whether women preferred tall men. She said some did, but added that she liked Kunan regardless of his size. Kunan started to return the affection, then stopped because saying too much would be unfair to Malika. Iko accused him of making only the woman confess and called him a flirt. Kunan then asked whether any letter had arrived about his new teacher. Nothing had been decided yet. Elsewhere in the royal magician's tower, a reluctant subordinate entered a dark room buried beneath books and papers. Xianli Finrol became furious when the visitor interrupted his precious sleep, but his mood changed when he heard that Director Rondamon had personally summoned him. Soon a message reached Kunan's household. Xianli Finrol had been selected as the leading candidate to teach him. Aiko instantly recognized the name because his magical power and beauty were famous among women throughout Huglia. She panicked over her uniform, hair, skin, and weight, while Kunan objected to showing beautiful Aiko to another man. At the palace, Risha arranged Xianli's outing under her authority because a royal magician needed a direct order from royalty to leave freely. She used the visit as official royal business, so he could travel without violating those restrictions. Malika prepared to accompany them, although Risha was irritated that Xianli had been chosen when she also wanted to teach Kunan. Two older princesses mocked Malika's engagement and reminded Risha that she had recently been reprimanded 3 times. Risha ordered them aside, reassured Malika, and continued toward the waiting carriage. When the carriage arrived at the Gurian estate, Kunan was surprised to encounter Malika without preparing his usual greeting. He recovered by praising her beauty and noticing that she smelled different. Malika explained that she was still considered too young for perfume but had changed her soap, which carried a mature floral scent. Then Kunan sensed the man accompanying her. Xianli's magical power was not merely dense. It also had a sticky quality like honey, and felt different from Rondamon's blue cheese presence. Kunan immediately decided that this was someone he wanted to respect as a teacher and introduced himself by asking permission to call Xianli Honey Teacher. Xianli angrily rejected the nickname and demanded to be addressed properly. He openly said that he disliked children and had not yet accepted the position. Rondamon had only told him that an interesting boy was waiting, so Xianli claimed he had come because of royal obligations rather than personal interest. Dario Sands of the Third Night Order accompanied the group as a guard, and Kunan recognized him from the 3 palace incidents. After the introductions, they sat in the garden. Xianli accused Kunan of mocking him, while Kunan insisted that he was sincerely impressed. Risha explained that the visit had been arranged for Kunan's sake, and Kunan thanked her warmly. He and Malika then exchanged affectionate remarks until Xianli interrupted and demanded that they discuss magic instead. Xianli asked how many layers Kunan could use when dividing and reconstructing a magical formation. Kunan answered that he could reliably manage 31 and sometimes 32, although failures still occurred. Xianli admitted he could handle 50. The number astonished Kunan, but Xianli was equally surprised that a child had already broken through the difficult barrier around 20 layers. Kunan explained that repeated study and many small adjustments had brought him there. He now called those tricks arrangements because Janie disliked hearing them called tricks. Risha complained that she had also wanted to become Kunan's instructor, but Xianli pointed out that she had refused to meet him when he first arrived. Xianli finally understood why the other royal magicians had fought over Kunan and ordered him to demonstrate his ability. Kunan first begged to learn the 50-layer method, but Xianli refused to waste time teaching someone who had not proven himself. Kunan showered him with praise and called him his master anyway. Xianli warned him not to use that title yet, then revealed his 3-star earth crest and created a thick stone wall. Kunan had to destroy it with magic, or their relationship would end immediately. Before Kunan began, Xianli asked to inspect the famous waterbed. He lay down on its warm, scented, dry surface, and was shocked by its softness and the enormous density of magic sustaining it. While resting, he analyzed how complex magical formations were divided and rebuilt, and he recognized Kunan's creation as the result of more than 40 reconstructed layers. Malika and the others drank tea while Xianli slept deeply on the waterbed for nearly an hour. When he woke, he assumed Kunan had given up. Kunan calmly asked permission to destroy the wall and cast his water spell. Instead of smashing the stone with force, he treated the wall itself like dirt during washing. The spell pushed the earth structure beyond what it could hold, making it suddenly fragile and causing it to collapse. Kunan had recognized that its texture resembled the extremely hard bread designed to break teeth. Xianli praised him for choosing the magic best suited to the target rather than relying on power. He then formally declared Kunan his disciple and called him the luckiest child in the world. Kunan was delighted to gain a master while standing beside Malika, but Xianli warned that lessons, experiments, and difficult work would now fill his life. He also turned to Malika and pointed out the problem she faced. Kunan was growing quickly enough to become the disciple of a royal magician. His future status would rise, and many women would eventually seek him. Malika remained only the 9th princess with little value in the royal hierarchy. She feared that if she stayed as she was, there might be no future in which she could remain beside Kunan. Xianli's harsh words forced her to confront how far Kunan had advanced, while her own position had not changed. Kunan immediately asked his new master not to bully Malika. Xianli claimed he was supporting her by making the danger clear, but Kunan accused him of being the type who teased a girl he liked until someone else took her away. He described Xianli as awkward, twisted, and incapable of showing kindness to women, then somehow decided that this clumsy side was also admirable. Xianli shouted at the child to stop. Kunan obediently answered, but called him honey teacher one more time, earning another angry correction as the new master and disciple began their strange relationship. Kunan arrives at a grand residence with Iko, and cheerfully greets the powerful magician he now calls his beloved master. He is ready for merciless training and even asks to begin with advanced formations or a barrage of water bullets. Instead, his master hands him a mountain of rough notes and orders him to make clean copies. When Kunan complains that this is not the training he expected, the man reveals that the papers contain important state secrets. Everyone else must remain outside until the work is finished. Kunan reluctantly sits at the desk while his master rests nearby, leaving the young apprentice to decipher every line of his terrible handwriting. Elsewhere in the residence, Princess Malika asks for a favor. She has only recently begun sword training and wants to use every free moment to improve. She asks the servants not to tell Kunan because she wants the effort to remain secret. Outside on the grass, Malika takes up 2 wooden swords and practices against an adult instructor. Her movements are still inexperienced, but she keeps attacking with complete focus. She believes that as Kunan's fiancée, she must work hard and become someone worthy of standing beside him. Back in the study, Kunan spends hours rewriting the notes and is exhausted by the time his master wakes. He has completed only about half, because the original writing is almost impossible to understand. Kunan jokes that he deserves extra pay for interpreting marks that barely resemble letters. His master explains that this unpleasant work is the lesson. Reading gives a person information, but deciphering an idea with the mind and reproducing it with the hands turns that information into knowledge the body remembers. Since knowledge becomes power, copying the notes is genuine magical training. Kunan accepts the reasoning and promises to finish everything. Before leaving, he asks about several strange diagrams in the papers. His master says those are easier to understand in person and orders Kunan to visit his own workplace next time. The new arrangement also gives Kunan more chances to see Malika, something both of them welcome even when his master complains that they are confusing the purpose of the visits. At the magician's tower, the adults notice that Kunan has grown. He is now 10 years old, and his body and magical power have both become stronger. Several magicians immediately compete for his attention. One wants another magical duel, while another wants his help with an experiment involving flight. Kunan's master drives them away and takes his apprentice toward a restricted room. After passing the room's unusual magical defenses, Kunan enters a private workshop filled with research, devices, and unfinished ideas. The sighted magicians are surrounded by tools, but Kunan listens closely as his master begins explaining what everything is. His master starts with a simple lamp. A magic tool is an object powered by a magician's mana, and a specialist who designs and builds such devices is known as a magic tool artisan. The notes Kunan copied contain theories and designs that have not all been tested. Fascinated, Kunan immediately wants to live in the workshop, but his master says the records and tools can become his someday without him moving in. He then reveals the device he is currently developing, the source of the diagrams Kunan noticed. It is meant to prepare hot food inside a person's room, even something like a freshly baked apple pie. Earth magic can form the solid frame, but it struggles with the small and flexible internal components. Kunan realizes that water magic may be better suited to those soft parts. His master confirms that this is exactly why he brought him there. Kunan eagerly agrees to help, turning his visit into their first joint development project. Kunan is later welcomed to lunch by other senior magicians who are eager to discuss magic with him. His master continues testing him, even during the gathering, while the adults examine how well earth and water magic can work together. Their compatibility makes the planned device seem practical. When someone offers Kunan a different instructor, he refuses and says that despite being worked hard, he has an excellent master. His open admiration embarrasses the man, but Kunan happily displays the closeness between them. During the conversation, Kunan asks about Milika and learns that she is attending the entrance ceremony for an advanced school for nobles. The adults then tell him about an institution meant for talented magicians from across the world. Many of the country's greatest spellcasters graduated from that magic school. Students must be at least 12 years old, so Kunan still has time, but they urge him to consider attending when he becomes eligible. 2 years pass. Kunan continues studying, building devices, and participating in increasingly difficult experiments under his master's direction. By winter, his magic has become far more precise, and he can combine complex formations with controlled water techniques. During an outdoor test, spells and projectiles fill the snowy grounds as Kunan works through the challenge. He successfully forms a defensive response and completes the exercise. His master acknowledges that he has finally done it, showing how much the quiet blind boy has developed after years of relentless practice. Their food device is also complete, and it can now serve freshly prepared meals. The invention earns a good reputation and apparently brings Kunan's master a considerable amount of money. Kunan asks why only his master receives the profit and demands payment for his part in the work. Aiko dramatically declares that she will support Kunan because she understands his talent better than anyone, leading to playful jokes about loyalty and marriage. The humor hides an impressive record. Kunan and his master have jointly produced 7 magic tools, written 5 new papers on magic, created experimental manuals, and begun another device designed to attract insects. Kunan assumes that project will also be completed together, but his master suddenly says he will handle the remaining work alone. The reason is that Kunan will turn 12 in the spring. His master orders him to prepare for magic school. Kunan refuses at once. He sees no reason to leave when he can remain beside the magician he admires, learn magic, and even continue being used for exhausting work. His master reminds him that he is an earth magician and cannot properly teach Kunan the deeper possibilities of water magic. The wider world may contain remarkable water magicians with 3 or even 4 stars. Kunan could meet people who understand his element in ways his current master never can. The thought of a truly great water magician finally makes Kunan hesitate. Going to school is no longer just an unwanted separation, it may be the next necessary step in his growth. Milika supports the decision even though Kunan will be going far away. She asks him to become a magnificent magician and promises to improve herself so she can wait for him without shame. Kunan takes her hand and agrees to attend the school. As preparations begin, he asks whether he should pack clothes, his usual pillow, and other daily belongings. His master tells him that he is forgetting something much more important. Kunan first assumes this is another joke, but the man means his eyes. Kunan has learned, worked, and enjoyed life so intensely that he has stopped talking about the ambition that originally drove him toward magic. Alone afterward, Kunan confronts that realization. Being blind no longer prevents him from studying, inventing devices, spending time with friends, or accomplishing meaningful work. Somewhere inside, he had begun thinking that his present life was already enough. He calls himself a fool for forgetting his greatest wish and the reason he once clung to magic. As the carriage journey and approaching separation become real, Kunan tries to remain composed after acting confidently in front of Milika. His master sees through him and bluntly tells him to stop crying. But the tears show how strongly Kunan feels both the coming farewell and the goal he must recover. Milika is struggling with darker feelings of her own. During the last 2 years, Kunan has built achievements that could make him famous. If he uses magic to gain sight, he may accomplish something unprecedented and leave his name in history. Milika fears that he will travel far beyond her reach and leave her behind. Ashamed, she admits that part of her has wished Kunan would remain blind, so he would always stay close to her. Dario and the others do not deny that this thought is selfish. Instead, they remind her that every heart contains both light and darkness. What matters is refusing to be consumed by either one and choosing the right path. They assure Milika that her training has strengthened more than her body, giving her the courage to support Kunan's future despite her fear. Meanwhile, Iko argues that Kunan's master has been too harsh, and is now abandoning his apprentice after using him for years. The magician counters that Iko is far too indulgent. He lists everything Kunan has learned, including a barrage of water bullets, 3-dimensional formations, fixed formations, imaginary code, flowing desert patterns, and the principles of magic tools. He has given Kunan the techniques needed to search for his own answer. Even he has never heard of anyone creating a working eyeball with magic, so no teacher can simply provide the final method. Whether Kunan's magical eyes are completed now depends on Kunan himself. Despite his rough words, the master is confident that his prized apprentice will find a way through. Kunan returns home and begins the largest experiment of his life. He studies books and considers the idea that a mirror can reflect everything before it. Remembering that an insect's eye is formed from an enormous collection of tiny visual surfaces, he creates many water mirrors around the room. However, producing numerous reflections does not make their information reach his mind. He changes the design again and again, but every complicated arrangement fails. Night falls, while Kunan remains surrounded by books, papers, and abandoned spheres. Exhausted and frustrated, he finally collapses over his work without finding the connection that would turn reflected scenery into sight. Unable to continue, Kunan asks his family to join him in the sauna late at night. No one wants to leave his father out because the man loves Kunan's sauna, and the gathering becomes a warm family break instead of another experiment. As they drink and recover from the heat, they realize that Kunan must be truly stuck if he has voluntarily paused his work. He explains that creating an eyeball is the greatest and most difficult project he has ever attempted. His family tells him to ask for help whenever he needs it and not to carry everything alone. Their kindness clears his mind. The next morning, Kunan thinks about how much he wants to see their faces and share the same scenery they see. That simple desire returns him to the reason for the entire experiment. Kunan stops trying to imitate the countless mirrors of an insect's eye and reduces the problem to its essential parts. He needs one water mirror to capture the moving scenery, and a way to deliver that changing information directly into his awareness. Using the flowing desert pattern he learned from his master, he forms a moving design across the mirror's surface. The pattern reads the reflected image and sends it to him without a complicated network of additional devices. Light, shapes, and the room finally enter Kunan's mind as a true field of vision. Stunned, he identifies the scenery and realizes that he can see. Kunan joyfully declares that he has created an eyeball with magic. Yet the first unexpected image produced by his new sight immediately leaves him confused, and the episode ends on his startled reaction. After finally creating a magical eye, Kunan keeps the promise he once made to himself. If he ever gains sight, the first person he wanted to see was himself. For years, he hated the helpless boy who could do nothing alone, constantly fell, and forced everyone nearby to worry about him. He expected that seeing his own face might deepen that hatred, or perhaps make him unexpectedly happy. Kunan forms a mirror and studies the brown-haired child reflected inside it. He is neither especially dignified nor bearded, which is natural for a boy his age. Yet the sight changes nothing fundamental. He is still himself, and for the first time he quietly wonders whether he might someday learn to like that person. Then he notices a huge, strange shape behind the reflection, and asks what it is. Kunan calls Iko into the study to test what his new eye can perceive. He can see her maid uniform, its clean appearance, and her familiar face. His first instinct is to compliment how well the uniform suits her, which embarrasses Iko even as she celebrates his success. She wants to tell the entire family immediately, but Kunan delays her with a food request and continues examining her. He asks whether she has a horn growing from her head. Iko jokes that her horn appears when she is angry and has withdrawn, because she is happy, unaware that Kunan can actually see a dark horn with no physical substance. Kunan is relieved that his usual teasing praise happens to fit the strange image before him. Although the magical eye works, it is clearly revealing more than ordinary sight. Kunan steps outside with Iko and experiences scenery for the first time. Flowers, trees, clouds, and the broad sky spread before him in colors and shapes he previously knew only through descriptions. The view should be beautiful, but dark, unnatural forms also occupy the landscape. Kunan casually asks Iko whether anything is standing behind him. When she becomes frightened and thinks he is telling a scary story, he drops the question. His experiment is still a success because he can see the physical world, yet the enormous crab-like creature following him is visible only to him. Kunan does not understand whether this is a defect in the spell or an entirely different kind of perception. Kunan's family rejoices when they learn that he can see. His mother is beautiful, just as everyone told him, and Kunan compares her to the heroic princess in an adventure troupe. His brother proudly points out the sword in a family portrait and asks whether he looks impressive too. However, Kunan's magical vision adds impossible details to each person. One seems to possess a heroic gaze, another carries a sword or spreads wings, while his father is so obscured that Kunan can barely recognize his presence at all. These images have no physical bodies and appear only through Kunan's eye. His family plans a celebration with flowers and crab cream croquettes, but Kunan hides his concern so he will not spoil their happiness. After joking with his brother about never telling their sensitive father how indistinct he looks, Kunan decides that the one person who might understand this phenomenon is his master, Xian. At the Magician's Tower, Xian's colleagues enter his unusually tidy room and marvel that Kunan's work has made the floor visible again. They also bring an important message. The king has granted Xian permission to go outside, along with instructions that make the purpose obvious. Xian immediately realizes that Kunan needs him. The approval allows the normally restricted magician to leave the tower and visit his apprentice, placing him close enough for Kunan to ask about the disturbing side of his new ability. Before Kunan can speak privately with Xian, he reunites with Princess Malika. She has already heard that he fulfilled his dream, and she asks about the spell. Kunan explains that he named his new creation the Mirror Eye, then agrees to look at her face. Seeing Malika was one of the reasons he worked so hard. Through his magical eye, he finds golden hair like morning light and clear blue eyes more beautiful than he ever imagined. Yet a large feather also seems to rise from Malika's head. Kunan turns the impossible detail into another playful compliment about the wings of freedom and possibility. Dario then congratulates him, and Kunan praises the knight's magnificent sword, before noticing that the weapon appears absurdly large. When Xion arrives, the problem becomes impossible to ignore. His entire body shines so intensely that Kunan cannot look directly at him. Xion boasts that he naturally outshines every human alive, but Kunan knows this is not normal light. The giant crab, Malika's feather, Dario's sword, and Xion's radiance all prove that his eye is seeing something beyond physical appearances. Kunan asks Xion to speak with him alone. Once they are seated away from the others, he describes everything his magical eye has added to the world. He sees a massive crab attached to himself, a feather on Malika, an oversized sword with Dario, strange traits on Iko and his family, and blinding light around Xion. These visions remain even though no one else can see or touch them. Kunan worries about future situations, joking that he cannot spend his life beside Malika while carrying a crab and staring at a feather stuck in her head. Xion listens seriously beneath his usual arrogance. He also checks whether ordinary scenery and colors look different, confirming that the problem is limited to the additional forms. Xion offers two possible explanations. The first is that Kunan can see the shape of a person's soul or some similar spiritual quality. That would make the giant crab a representation connected to Kunan himself. The second possibility involves mana. Certain places in the world collect magical power or act as paths through which it flows. Xion once entered such a place and became so overwhelmed that it felt like being drunk. While losing consciousness, he saw things without physical bodies that resembled Kunan's descriptions. There are too few examples to identify a rule, so Xion refuses to declare the eye a failure. Nature contains creatures that cannot distinguish colors, creatures with many eyes, and creatures that cannot see at all. No one can prove that only one form of sight is correct. Kunan is allowed to see the world in his own way, and the strange images may eventually reveal something important. Xion advises him to keep looking unless the experience becomes unbearable, record more examples, and hide the secret until they understand it because other people may react badly. Reassured, Kunan decides to continue using the eye even though Xion remains painfully bright. While Kunan and Xion finish their private discussion, Malika asks Iko what gift might please Kunan because his birthday is approaching. Iko believes he will treasure anything that comes from the princess, which only makes Malika more nervous about choosing. When Kunan returns, both sides jokingly claim they were sharing secrets. Later, Kunan prepares his old room for departure. He has finished reading the books kept there and plans to leave them in the main building's library. Iko observes that the once crowded room now feels empty, making the approaching separation impossible to ignore. That evening, Kunan's family and Malika celebrate his 12th birthday. Everyone raises a glass and congratulates him. His father gives him a strong, durable traveling item meant to last for years, while his mother encourages him to continue studying. His brother presents a carefully researched gourmet map showing good restaurants along the long road to the magic school. The playful gift is meant to give Kunan something enjoyable during the journey. Mentioning the distance makes his mother cry because her son will soon be far away. Kunan and the others reassure her that school will not separate the family forever. His father reminds everyone that this is a celebration, and they return their attention to the meal, rather than letting the farewell consume the night. Kunan has already packed familiar clothes and only the things he truly needs, planning to purchase anything missing after he arrives. Malika apologizes because her own school responsibilities will prevent her from seeing him off on the day of departure. Kunan tells her not to neglect the duties she must perform as a princess. She then gives him her personal birthday present, a bracelet matching one she wears herself. Malika asks him to speak to it as though he were speaking to her whenever life at magic school becomes painful, promising that she will do the same. Kunan says the matching bracelet outshines any crown and jokes that even Xion would suffer from its brilliance. More sincerely, he promises to write letters and return to Malika. Under the night sky, they exchange wishes for good health and part without hiding how much the promise means to them. On the morning, Kunan leaves. His family and attendants gather outside the residence. They agree not to show their tears because Kunan must be the most uncertain person among them. Kunan walks out with the same cheerful energy he uses for everything and casually announces that he is leaving. The adults are almost disappointed that his farewell is not more dramatic, but they admit that it suits him. From the carriage, Kunan calls back that he may return in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or perhaps 10. His family tells him to go safely as the carriage rolls away. Watching him disappear down the road, they reflect that his experiences have changed him greatly, and they can only hope the change has been for the better. As the estate vanishes behind him, Kunan thinks about the unknown magicians waiting at the school. He is leaving his family, Malika, Iko, and Xion, but he carries their lessons, gifts, and promises into a much larger world. Elsewhere, inside a dark church, an attendant approaches a silver-haired woman dressed in white and addresses her as a saint. He informs her that it is time to depart for the magic school. She calmly accepts the message and rises to leave, revealing that Kunan is not the only unusual student beginning the journey there. 5 days after leaving home, Kunan's carriage is still traveling through the kingdom of Hulia. The magic school lies in Dilisik, and at their current pace, the journey may take an entire month. Before reaching that distant country, the carriage approaches the estate of Kunan's maternal grandfather. Iko then confirms that she will travel no farther. She wants to marry, and she believes that abandoning that goal now would mean abandoning it forever. Kunan asks how he is supposed to live without her, but Iko teasingly asks whether he plans to break his engagement to Princess Malika and marry her instead. Their familiar jokes cannot hide the sadness of the coming separation, as the estate finally appears ahead. Kunan has not visited the main family estate in 4 years. Iko reminds him that his previous visit began because he heard about its enormous library and demanded to search for books on magic. Back then, the gloomy child stubbornly danced until his parents agreed to take him. His grandfather is overjoyed to see how much he has grown and embraces him with overwhelming affection. Through the mirror eye, Kunan sees the old man as a demon king, matching the heroic image surrounding his mother. His grandfather offers to buy anything Kunan wants as a school entrance gift, but a letter from Kunan's mother strictly limits the amount. The old man complains that her limit is too small, secretly considers buying something extravagant anyway, and only stops when Kunan explains what he truly needs. He has come to meet the new attendant, who will inherit Aiko's duties. The replacement is Rinko Round, Aiko's 18-year-old younger sister. Rinko openly admits that she volunteered because the salary will help her open a shop and save money for marriage. She already has a fiancé, so she immediately rejects the possibility of becoming Kunan's mistress. Kunan assures her that he is devoted to Malika and advises Rinko to value her fiancé more than every daily meal. Rinko explains that she and her future husband have promised to open their shop together, making the job important to both of them. Kunan is relieved that she can exchange jokes with him instead of remaining stiff and formal. His grandfather has also heard about Rinko's unusual personality and believes someone like her is exactly what Kunan needs during the next stage of his life. Iko remembers the day she first introduced herself to Kunan and began caring for him. She taught him the names of ordinary foods, encouraged his curiosity, and watched him transform from a withdrawn child into a confident young magician. Now she teaches Rinko the practical details of the job. Kunan sometimes forgets meals when studying magic, so sandwiches let him eat while working. He favors fillings such as hamburger, meat, and bacon, along with his peculiar jokes about milk tea. Rinko listens carefully and becomes confident that she can handle him. Iko then issues a far more serious warning. Kunan is young, sincere, and likely to follow the guidance of people close to him. If Rinko teaches him corrupt habits or takes advantage of that trust, Iko will never forgive her. Rinko points out that Kunan compliments nearly every woman he meets and may eventually attract dangerous attention. Iko refuses to accept that her precious young master could ever become a womanizer. The sisters argue until their emotions nearly overwhelm the room, while Kunan calmly eats the sandwiches they prepared. He praises the bacon and jokes that the warmth of their sisterly bond makes the meal even better. His harmless charm immediately proves Rinko's point, leaving Iko even more determined to protect him. The interruption ends when Rinko announces that it is time for Kunan to continue his journey. Before leaving, Kunan speaks to Iko one last time. When his tutors Janie and Fulora departed, he told Iko that losing her as well would make life impossible. Now he is separating not only from her, but also from his parents, his brother, the court magicians, Xian, and Malika. Kunan accepts this because attending the magic school is the path he chose for himself. Distance does not mean the people he loves will disappear. Iko plans to remain in Hulia and continue working even after marriage, so they will meet again when Kunan returns. By then, she may even have a child. Iko wishes him good health, Kunan thanks her for everything she has done, and they embrace before finally letting each other go. Kunan's grandfather makes one last attempt to convince him to remain at the estate, but Kunan cheerfully boards the carriage with Rinko. Once they are alone, Kunan asks whether her fiancé can truly wait several years while she works. Rinko says they both accepted the delay because the money will fund their future restaurant. She briefly jokes that they considered a much darker occupation, but cooking is legal and suits their love of food. Kunan welcomes her as his new partner and looks forward to the unknown life ahead. Everything will be new, including the places he visits and the people he meets, and he decides that this change may not be bad at all. Near Dilisik, Kunan and Rinko stop in a town where even ordinary shops are filled with magic. A bookstore contains more magical volumes than Kunan has ever seen in one place, but each book costs a fortune because true grimoires are rare. A woman who loves magic notices Kunan and asks whether he hopes to enter the school. When she learns that his element is water, she eagerly asks for a demonstration. Kunan performs a beautiful spell, delighting her even though she cannot use magic herself. She explains that this year's applicants include a saint from the Holy Nation, following other famous students admitted in previous years. She expects Kunan to become well-known too. The bookseller then offers him a discounted grimoire written by the currently popular magician, Zayon. Kunan refuses because he already knows its contents and likely produced the clean copy used to publish it. Rinko is stunned to realize how closely her new master is connected to such valuable work. At a clothing shop, Rinko touches fabric and fur throughout the store without asking permission. The owner confronts her, and she explains that she is memorizing differences in texture for Kunan's experiments. After examining an extremely rare dark fox fur, Kunan uses water magic to reproduce the animal's shape and feel. The result moves like a living black fox, even though it contains only a small amount of mana. The amazed owner asks whether Kunan can recreate anything once he understands its texture. Kunan says he can reproduce shape and touch, but imitating a person is far more difficult. When the owner makes an inappropriate suggestion about reproducing a woman, Rinko explodes in anger and drags Kunan away from the shop. She declares the town harmful to a child's education, while the embarrassed man remains behind holding the magical fox and regretting every word. Moments later, a group of white-robed visitors enters the same store looking for the rare dark fox item. A silver-haired young woman is surprised when the supposedly untamable creature behaves calmly around people. The owner quickly explains that it is not a real animal but a construction made from water magic. The visitors inspect it and realize that an unknown young magician created a moving creature with very little mana. The technique does not match the magic in their existing knowledge. Their surprise confirms that Kunan's casual experiment was far more extraordinary than either he or Rinko understood when they left. Kunan and Rinko finally arrive in Dilisik and stand before the enormous magic school. After the long journey, Rinko expects Kunan to enter a student dormitory while she arranges her own position. Instead, the staff informs them that every dorm room is occupied, and that the application deadline passed long ago. Neither Kunan nor the people who prepared his journey knew about it. A hotel would be expensive for the several years he may remain at school, so Kunan suggests renting a small house where he and Rinko can live together. A helpful employee gives them a list of real estate offices that assist applicants who miss the dormitory deadline and can provide homes suitable for using magic. The unexpected problem changes their plans, but it also marks the beginning of their life together in the new city. Inside the school, an administrator receives the new student roster and learns that several applicants may qualify for a special class. One name immediately attracts attention. Kunan Gurian is listed as Zion's apprentice. The connection is enough to make the faculty curious before Kunan has even completed the entrance process. Outside, however, Rinko discovers that only students and authorized personnel may enter the campus. Her attempt to persuade the gatekeeper fails, and she must remain behind, while Kunan continues alone. A staff member warns Kunan about the path and guides him into the school grounds. Kunan thanks her and calls her lady because he does not yet know her name. She finds the title strange and introduces herself as Ruvella. Kunan immediately praises the sound of her name and playfully remarks on how its parts fit together, leaving Ruvella unsure how to respond to such an unusual child. She leads him toward the designated waiting area, while observing that his circumstances and personality are both remarkable. Kunan reaches the waiting students and sees unfamiliar faces all around him. Instead of feeling intimidated, he smiles with excitement and looks forward to discovering what his new classmates can do. Kunan begins his first day at the magic school by approaching a silver-haired girl and asking about light magic. She explains that many people consider light superior to other elements, but Kunan argues that magic has no simple hierarchy and believes her knowledge could still inspire his water spells. The girl warns that part of her emotional capacity is missing, so even normal conversation may unintentionally offend people. She identifies the condition as the hero's scar, a curse connected to the Demon King just like Kunan's blindness. Her rare light element and shared condition make Kunan even more curious. He calls their meeting destiny and keeps asking questions until a teacher interrupts what sounds suspiciously like flirting. The other selected applicants then arrive, completing a group of 4. Their instructor introduces himself as Saf Cricket, a teacher at Dilisik Magic School, while Safai serves as an assistant instructor. Saf congratulates all 4 students on being admitted before they have taken any test. Magic users are too valuable for the school to reject casually, so the entrance exam is not truly about acceptance. Instead, it determines which of 3 courses suits them. The third class is the basic group for learning fundamentals. The second class resembles an ordinary teacher-led classroom and contains the largest number of students. The special class is devoted to free research. Its members choose what and where to study, improve their spells, invent new techniques, write grimoires, or build magic tools. The freedom sounds perfect to Kunan, but Saf warns that the course is designed to create first-rate magicians and is difficult both to enter and to graduate from. Each applicant was recommended for it, and the tests will determine whether those recommendations were deserved. The practical examination begins with Hank Beat. He possesses a 2-star fire crest and can use 7 spells. At Saf's request, Hank demonstrates his strongest technique. He first sends mana along a chosen path, and then ignites fire across that route, producing a controlled line of flame. Kunan studies the structure, instead of merely admiring the result. The fire itself is straightforward, but setting the route in advance allows many possible applications. Saf also praises Hank's control and accepts the demonstration before calling the next student. Rhea Horse steps forward with a 2-star wind crest and 8 usable spells, an impressive number for someone his age. Saf shares the wind element and immediately takes a personal interest in him. Rhea asks everyone to move away before lifting his focus into the air. He gathers mana overhead, pulls the surrounding air together, and releases it as a powerful wind technique. The spell consumes visibly more mana than the beginner magic Kunan knows. As the blast tears across the training ground, Kunan recognizes the difference between basic and intermediate magic and becomes eager to understand its construction. The silver-haired girl introduces herself as Rhea's Centrance. She has a rare 3-star light crest and knows 5 spells. Her best magic is healing, but there is no injured person available for a demonstration. Instead, she releases an extremely fast burst of light. Kunan realizes that an opponent would need to react before the spell was fired, because dodging after release would be nearly impossible. Rather than fearing the attack, he becomes even more interested in Rhea's, and the possibilities of combining light with water. Kunan is the final student. He reports a 2-star water crest and only 2 usable beginner spells, the same basic techniques he has transformed through years of experimentation. The teachers are surprised that Xion's famous apprentice knows so few named spells. Saf then reveals that 2 special requests were attached to Kunan's examination. One came from a senior court magician in Hulia, and the other came directly from Xion. His master claimed that Kunan could clear any challenge and demanded an unusually difficult test, so everyone would witness the ability of his prized apprentice. Kunan accepts without complaint because this is exactly how Xion normally treats him. Seifai is less amused, and seems eager to send the arrogant magician's student home with an impossible task. Saf begins Kunan's practical test by surrounding himself with an intermediate wind barrier and ordering Kunan to land a water spell on him. The moving wall follows Saf's body, repels water, and can cut anything that touches it. Since Kunan has no conventional attack spell, breaking through should be impossible even for a capable student. Kunan is disappointed because he expected a harder challenge, but Saf tells him to prove himself before complaining. Kunan agrees, partly because being all talk would make him unpopular with girls, and begins forming large numbers of controlled water spheres around the barrier. Saf assumes that additional spheres will accomplish nothing against the wind. Kunan continues until water surrounds the barrier from every direction, leaving no open route of escape. He then changes the state of his spell, and creates a dense enclosing field that forces Saf to maintain the barrier continuously. Kunan calmly announces that he can preserve this formation for 2 full days, and asks how long Saf can sustain the mana-hungry intermediate spell. Saf cannot even maintain it for half a day. No time limit or direct breakthrough was required, so Kunan has converted the test into a battle of endurance that Saf cannot win. Weakening the barrier would allow Kunan's water to reach him, while maintaining it guarantees eventual exhaustion. Seifai understands that the low cost of beginner magic gives Kunan an overwhelming advantage. Saf admits defeat, astonished that Xion's apprentice defeated his barrier without using anything beyond the 2 simple spells he claimed to know. After winning, Kunan immediately returns to Rhea's and asks how she produces such a fast light attack. He wants to combine her light with his water, but she shows no interest in his invitation. Saf reminds Kunan that the examination is continuing and moves everyone into a classroom for individual interviews. Kunan raises his hand to complain that Reyes refuses to accept his invitations, a question no teacher expected during an entrance assessment. Saf orders him to stop pursuing girls until the tests are finished because distracting other applicants at an important moment is unfair. Kunan finally apologizes and waits while Hank and the others are called away one at a time. Kunan asks what happens during the interview, but Saf says the subject depends on the student. When they eventually speak alone, Saf returns to the practical test and asks whether Kunan had another plan if the endurance strategy failed. Kunan says he intended to attack the wind barrier directly. He would let water penetrate and merge with the moving wind, then interfere with Saf's mana from inside and seize control of the spell. His intuition tells him that connected magic is easier to disrupt internally than externally because water can permeate almost anything. Saf is struck by the idea. Kunan admits that he believes water is the greatest element. He cannot call it the strongest yet because he has never defeated Xion, but he intends to study deeply, master its hidden possibilities, and eventually surpass his teacher. Seifai leads Kunan to a separate door for the final part of his assessment. Beyond it lies a place described simply as night. No one fully understands the space, but Seifai assures him that there is ground beneath his feet and offers to accompany him. Kunan enters alone. The mirror eye cannot detect mana, reflected scenery, or any light at all, making this the first complete darkness he has experienced since creating it. He identifies soil and grass through touch and smell, and imagines stars above him, even though he cannot see them. a hidden woman recognizes him as Xion's apprentice and draws him into conversation. Kunan keeps a respectful distance because he is engaged, yet he still praises her as an experienced older woman and an exceptional magician. She questions what he learned that day. Kunan eagerly explains that every spell was new to him and that he cannot wait to reproduce and adapt them at home. Satisfied with his curiosity and ability, the witch Graal Uber places him in the special class and tells him to build real achievements there. Kunan leaves before Graal can finish offering him her personal instruction, which wounds her pride. Afterward, she reads a message from Xion. He boasts that Kunan is his finest apprentice and will surpass her within a few years, though naturally never surpassing Xion himself. Beneath the arrogance, Xion asks her not to punish Kunan because of their own rivalry. He reminds her that the boy is still young and sensitive, and asks her to challenge him gradually. Graal recognizes that Xion's tone has not changed, but his concern proves how highly he values Kunan. Outside the school, Kunan reunites with Rinko and says the examination was fascinating. Rinko was lonely while waiting and comforted herself by eating 3 delicious parfaits. Kunan asks her to show him the shop sometime, which she immediately interprets as a date. He insists that he did not invite any other girl and jokingly claims complete devotion to Rinko, although she finds the declaration deeply unconvincing. Inside, the teachers continue discussing him. Despite Kunan's difficult personality, his talent and drive are undeniable. They predict that he may someday earn the title of Blue Magician. Graal remembers Kunan looking towards something inside the darkness. His magical eye remains incomplete, yet it uses a method even she does not recognize. Rather than fearing the unknown spell, she is delighted. Discoveries like this are exactly what make magic fascinating. Back at the Gurian residence, Kunan's family receives a report about his first days at magic school. They proudly learn that he earned excellent results and entered the highest special class. The report also mentions that he pushed his practical examination too far and is already being called a problem child, but his family treats that as further proof of his talent. Their celebration ends when they read the school's financial rules. Special class students are forbidden from receiving regular support money and must pay their own living expenses. Kunan's father is furious and wants to protest, while others accept that this is how the school forces talented students to become independent. At school, Reyes refuses to accept the rule. She came to study magic, not spend her time earning money, and she must also pay the salaries of 2 attendants. Saf explains that the special class is meant to produce first-rate magicians, and a magician unable to earn money with magic cannot truly be called first-rate. Reyes has no idea how to cover her enormous monthly expenses. The others are also taken to the private research rooms provided to each special class student. The rooms are free, but students must purchase their own books, medicine, and experimental materials. They may study or ignore their work as they please, yet anyone who fails to earn enough yearly credits will be demoted. Credits come from experiments and achievements recognized by the teachers, connecting research, income, and advancement. Kunan is confident because he previously developed profitable magic tools with Xion, even if his master never paid him properly. He realizes that Xion probably discovered the profession of magic tool artisan while studying at this same school. Kunan has wanted a magical career since childhood and is excited to create one for himself. He asks Reyes what kind of work she could perform with light magic, and once again invites her to discuss it over a famous magic parfait. Reyes refuses immediately. The other students begin considering their own futures, while Kunan leaves the classroom already searching for a practical way to earn money. At the rented house, Rinko finds Kunan resting inside a floating water sphere and asks what happened at school. Kunan complains that Reyes still rejects every invitation. Rinko firmly corrects his behavior. A gentleman must respect a woman's refusal, avoid persistent invitations, and not arrange private meetings that might cause damaging rumors. Kunan accepts the lesson and promises to be more careful. Rinko then asks whether the ban on financial support will threaten her salary. Kunan assures her that he can still pay her. That confidence is exactly what she needed to hear, although she privately suspects that Iko's idea of gentlemanly behavior taught Kunan several strange habits. Reyes faces the same problem at her own residence. The school confirms that assistance from the Holy Nation and every other outside source is forbidden. One attendant briefly offers to work without salary, then admits she was only testing the idea. Reyes cannot use her sacred healing magic for ordinary commerce because she believes the power was given for a holy purpose. With no obvious income and monthly costs of 1,500,000 NECA, the problem seems impossible. Her attendants finally suggest asking a teacher for advice, and the answer they receive points toward the one student they least expect Reyes to consult. Kunan moves faster. Students who stay awake for several nights during experiments desperately need rest, so he turns his waterbed into a paid sleeping service. Customers choose a timed course and lie inside waterbeds shaped by his magic. Even when every bed is occupied, more exhausted students wait outside. An hour of sleep feels like half a day of recovery, making the service extremely popular among researchers who refuse to stop working. Saf and other teachers inspect the operation and are amazed that Xion praised the bed himself. Kunan explains that researchers often lose track of sunrise and continue until their bodies fail. A brief, efficient nap solves a real problem. The teachers encourage him to sell the service to faculty as well, and the growing pile of coins proves that Kunan has already found a successful market. Meanwhile, rumors about Kunan spread through the school. Some students identify him as Xion's apprentice, while others connect him with Reyes and jokingly call him her boyfriend. Reyes hates the idea of relying on him, but everyone she consults says that Kunan is the best person to ask about earning money through magic. Feeling humiliated, she finally enters his research room. Kunan agrees to help, but before discussing anything, he asks her to summon Seifai. After Rinko's lesson, he refuses to remain alone with a girl and risk misunderstandings. Reyes is surprised that he has made such a responsible choice, and Seifai joins them as a witness. The group first considers selling research reports containing experimental results and magical verification. Such documents can be valuable to other magicians, but new students may not produce important information quickly enough. Reyes still refuses to commercialize her sacred healing, and learning an unrelated trade would take too long. Kunan asks whether her other light techniques may be used in products. When she confirms that they can, he proposes building and selling a magic tool together. Seifai warns that a successful invention may become extremely valuable, and shared ownership often causes arguments. Reyes answers that she needs money now, and accepts Kunan as the project's leading creator. With the terms understood, she agrees to collaborate, and Kunan celebrates the chance to experiment with light magic. They visit Slee Garin, a teacher specializing in light magic. Slee has already used Kunan's waterbed and praises both its comfort and the improvement it brought to her appearance. After meeting Reyes, she presents the group with seeds of Shilra, a sacred medicinal plant that normally grows only in holy ground. Reyes believes cultivating it elsewhere is impossible. Kunan has researched the conditions of holy sites and knows they contain powerful sacred mana and purification. Since Reyes possesses a unique barrier technique, he suggests using that spell to reproduce the environment of holy ground artificially. Slee finds the proposal fascinating and allows them to test it with several pots of soil. Reyes casts her barrier around the pots, filling the controlled space with sacred power. Kunan and Slee observe every change as light gathers over the soil. The experiment succeeds, proving that a holy environment can be recreated through magic rather than location alone. Kunan immediately begins writing every detail because a single sheet cannot contain everything he wants to record. Reyes finally understands that his repeated invitations were driven by genuine interest in her magic, not merely an attempt to flirt. His complete transformation whenever research begins shows how deeply magic controls his attention. Kunan explains the commercial goal. Shilra is rare and valuable because it can be processed into medicine for treating injuries. If they cultivate it successfully, Reyes may earn the money she needs. She is stunned that Kunan found an answer in so little time after she had considered the problem endlessly. Kunan ruins the serious moment by asking whether she is admiring his profile, but Reyes denies ever being attracted to him. Slee then reveals that the 5 seeds used in the experiment cost 1 million NECA in total. Kunan had promised to pay if cultivation failed, while successful growth and a complete report would make them free. Because the experiment worked, he thanks Reyes for saving him from an enormous loss. The group next processes the cultivated Shilra. They crush the petals, mix the prepared ingredients, and use magic to complete the medicine. Careful inspection confirms that the result is authentic Shilra healing medicine of exceptionally high purity. Its estimated value reaches 1,500,000 to 2 million NECA. Reyes feels guilty because Kunan risked his own money to solve her problem. She apologizes for causing trouble, but Kunan says he would rather hear gratitude than an apology. Reyes sincerely thanks him, then immediately rejects his playful question about whether she has finally fallen for him. Kunan arranges a long-term agreement with a guild to sell the medicine, ensuring that Reyes can pay her attendance and continue her studies. The successful project also gives Kunan enough material for a report on light magic. To celebrate the deal, he invites Reyes, Seifai, Slee, and the others to lunch, and gallantly tells the ladies to order anything. The meal succeeds until the bill arrives. An expensive vintage wine pushes the total to 220,000 NECA. Kunan realizes that offering his entire wallet to a table of ladies is not always wise, but he accepts the cost as another valuable lesson. When Kunan returns to school, Hank and Ria admit that they still do not know how to begin earning credits or money. Kunan first jokes that he would work much harder if they were women, then offers ideas anyway. He asks the fire magician Hank to help create the bacon Kunan likes to eat. For the wind magician, Ria, he proposes an experiment involving flight. The suggestion sounds strange, but Kunan is already connecting their individual elements with practical research, giving both boys a place to start. Elsewhere, several female students secretly observe the activities surrounding Kunan. Their bodies are scattered around the room as if they have been gathering information through unusual means. They realize they share the same objective. Each group wants to acquire Kunan Gurian for itself, confirming that his rapid success has already made him a valuable target inside the school. Back at the Gurian residence, Kunan's family receives a report about his first days at magic school. They proudly learn that he earned excellent results and entered the highest special class. The report also mentions that he pushed his practical examination too far and is already being called a problem child, but his family treats that as further proof of his talent. Their celebration ends when they read the school's financial rules. Special class students are forbidden from receiving regular support money and must pay their own living expenses. Kunan's father is furious and wants to protest, while others accept that this is how the school forces talented students to become independent. At school, Reyes refuses to accept the rule. She came to study magic, not spend her time earning money, and she must also pay the salaries of 2 attendants. Saf explains that the special class is meant to produce first-rate magicians, and a magician unable to earn money with magic cannot truly be called first-rate. Reyes has no idea how to cover her enormous monthly expenses. The others are also taken to the private research rooms provided to each special class student. The rooms are free, but students must purchase their own books, medicine, and experimental materials. They may study or ignore their work as they please, yet anyone who fails to earn enough yearly credits will be demoted. Credits come from experiments and achievements recognized by the teachers, connecting research, income, and advancement. Kunan is confident because he previously developed profitable magic tools with Xion, even if his master never paid him properly. He realizes that Xion probably discovered the profession of magic tool artisan while studying at this same school. Kunan has wanted a magical career since childhood and is excited to create one for himself. He asks Reyes what kind of work she could perform with light magic and once again invites her to discuss it over a famous magic parfait. Reyes refuses immediately. The other students begin considering their own futures, while Kunan leaves the classroom already searching for a practical way to earn money. At the rented house, Rinko finds Kunan resting inside a floating water sphere and asks what happened at school. Kunan complains that Reyes still rejects every invitation. Rinko firmly corrects his behavior. A gentleman must respect a woman's refusal, avoid persistent invitations, and not arrange private meetings that might cause damaging rumors. Kunan accepts the lesson and promises to be more careful. Rinko then asks whether the ban on financial support will threaten her salary. Kunan assures her that he can still pay her. That confidence is exactly what she needed to hear, although she privately suspects that Iko's idea of gentlemanly behavior taught Kunan several strange habits. Reyes faces the same problem at her own residence. The school confirms that assistance from the Holy Nation and every other outside source is forbidden. One attendant briefly offers to work without salary, then admits she was only testing the idea. Reyes cannot use her sacred healing magic for ordinary commerce because she believes the power was given for a holy purpose. With no obvious income and monthly costs of 1,500,000 NECA, the problem seems impossible. Her attendants finally suggest asking a teacher for advice, and the answer they receive points toward the one student they least expect Reyes to consult. Kunan moves faster. Students who stay awake for several nights during experiments desperately need rest, so he turns his waterbed into a paid sleeping service. Customers choose a timed course and lie inside waterbeds shaped by his magic. Even when every bed is occupied, more exhausted students wait outside. An hour of sleep feels like half a day of recovery, making the service extremely popular among researchers who refuse to stop working. Saf and other teachers inspect the operation and are amazed that Xion praised the bed himself. Kunan explains that researchers often lose track of sunrise and continue until their bodies fail. A brief, efficient nap solves a real problem. The teachers encourage him to sell the service to faculty as well, and the growing pile of coins proves that Kunan has already found a successful market. Meanwhile, rumors about Kunan spread through the school. Some students identify him as Xion's apprentice, while others connect him with Reyes and jokingly call him her boyfriend. Reyes hates the idea of relying on him, but everyone she consults says that Kunan is the best person to ask about earning money through magic. Feeling humiliated, she finally enters his research room. Kunan agrees to help, but before discussing anything, he asks her to summon Seifi. After Rinko's lesson, he refuses to remain alone with a girl and risk misunderstandings. Reyes is surprised that he has made such a responsible choice, and Seifi joins them as a witness. The group first considers selling research reports containing experimental results and magical verification. Such documents can be valuable to other magicians, but new students may not produce important information quickly enough. Reyes still refuses to commercialize her sacred healing, and learning an unrelated trade would take too long. Kunan asks whether her other light techniques may be used in products. When she confirms that they can, he proposes building and selling a magic tool together. CFI warns that a successful invention may become extremely valuable, and shared ownership often causes arguments. Reyes answers that she needs money now, and accepts Kunan as the project's leading creator. With the terms understood, she agrees to collaborate, and Kunan celebrates the chance to experiment with light magic. They visit Slee Gowron, a teacher specializing in light magic. Slee has already used Kunan's waterbed and praises both its comfort and the improvement it brought to her appearance. After meeting Reyes, she presents the group with seeds of Shilra, a sacred medicinal plant that normally grows only in holy ground. Reyes believes cultivating it elsewhere is impossible. Kunan has researched the conditions of holy sites and knows they contain powerful sacred mana and purification. Since Reyes possesses a unique barrier technique, he suggests using that spell to reproduce the environment of holy ground artificially. Slee finds the proposal fascinating and allows them to test it with several pots of soil. Reyes casts her barrier around the pots, filling the controlled space with sacred power. Kunan and Slee observe every change as light gathers over the soil. The experiment succeeds, proving that a holy environment can be recreated through magic rather than location alone. Kunan immediately begins writing every detail because a single sheet cannot contain everything he wants to record. Reyes finally understands that his repeated invitations were driven by genuine interest in her magic, not merely an attempt to flirt. His complete transformation whenever research begins shows how deeply magic controls his attention. Kunan explains the commercial goal. Shilra is rare and valuable because it can be processed into medicine for treating injuries. If they cultivate it successfully, Reyes may earn the money she needs. She is stunned that Kunan found an answer in so little time after she had considered the problem endlessly. Kunan ruins the serious moment by asking whether she is admiring his profile, but Reyes denies ever being attracted to him. Slee then reveals that the 5 seeds used in the experiment cost 1 million NECA in total. Kunan had promised to pay if cultivation failed, while successful growth and a complete report would make them free. Because the experiment worked, he thanks Reyes for saving him from an enormous loss. The group next processes the cultivated Shilra. They crush the petals, mix the prepared ingredients, and use magic to complete the medicine. Careful inspection confirms that the result is authentic Shilra, healing medicine of exceptionally high purity. Its estimated value reaches 1,500,000 to 2 million NECA. Reyes feels guilty because Kunan risked his own money to solve her problem. She apologizes for causing trouble, but Kunan says he would rather hear gratitude than an apology. Reyes sincerely thanks him, then immediately rejects his playful question about whether she has finally fallen for him. Kunan arranges a long-term agreement with a guild to sell the medicine, ensuring that Reyes can pay her attendance and continue her studies. The successful project also gives Kunan enough material for a report on light magic. To celebrate the deal, he invites Reyes, Seyfi, Slee, and the others to lunch and gallantly tells the ladies to order anything. The meal succeeds until the bill arrives. An expensive vintage wine pushes the total to 220,000 NECA. Kunan realizes that offering his entire wallet to a table of ladies is not always wise, but he accepts the cost as another valuable lesson. When Kunan returns to school, Hank and Rhea admit that they still do not know how to begin earning credits or money. Kunan first jokes that he would work much harder if they were women, then offers ideas anyway. He asks the fire magician Hank to help create the bacon Kunan likes to eat. For the wind magician, Rhea, he proposes an experiment involving flight. The suggestions sound strange, but Kunan is already connecting their individual elements with practical research, giving both boys a place to start. Elsewhere, several female students secretly observe the activities surrounding Kunan. Their bodies are scattered around the room as if they have been gathering information through unusual means. They realize they share the same objective. Each group wants to acquire Kunan Gurian for itself, confirming that his rapid success has already made him a valuable target inside the school. Late at night, Kunan writes a letter to his beloved fiancée, Mirika. More than a month has passed since he began living in the magical city of Dilasik, and he has finally adjusted to school life. He tells her about his many new experiences, his constant experiments, and even the female friends he has made. Kunan insists that he is working every day to become a gentleman worthy of standing beside her. While his words sound sincere, his recent behavior around beautiful women makes the letter far less reassuring than he realizes. The next day, a beautiful senior named Arya approaches Kunan on behalf of the Strength faction and asks him to join. Kunan is dazzled because he has never seen anyone like her in his rural hometown. He admits that he is more interested in Arya than the faction, then happily accepts her invitation. Soon afterward, Kunan returns to Rhea's flight training. Rhea explains that strength, harmony, and rationality were once bitter rival factions, but the peaceful era has turned their competition into a more productive relationship. Kunan is more focused on the experiment. He guides Rhea higher, monitors his control, and records each attempt, as Rhea says that working with him has recently become great fun. Another striking senior arrives and introduces herself as a representative of the Harmony faction. Her mature beauty overwhelms Kunan, and when she promises that everything will proceed as he wishes, he accepts her invitation too. Rhea's mana immediately becomes unstable because he cannot believe what he is hearing. Kunan tells him to concentrate if he wants to maintain long-distance flight. Before Rhea can recover, a third beautiful recruiter from Rationality appears. Kunan is once again enchanted and agrees to join her faction as well. Rhea loses control completely, forcing Kunan to end the experiment and bring him down before the situation becomes dangerous. Once safely on the ground, Rhea tells Kunan that accepting invitations from 2 factions is already wrong, and accepting all 3 is much worse. Kunan casually says he cannot refuse a lady's request, especially when every recruiter is beautiful. One of the seniors returns to welcome Ria into rationality and invites Kunan again. Kunan accepts without hesitation, and even jokes that a gentleman who refuses a lady deserves to have his face examined twice, although he cannot see it himself. Ria and the others warn him that the three factions may be peaceful now, but none of them will quietly tolerate sharing the same highly desired new student. Inside the Strength faction's headquarters, the members celebrate Arya for securing Kunan. They call her their most charming woman, shower her with exaggerated praise, and make absurd romantic offers while treating the recruitment as a major victory. Arya is embarrassed, but the others remind her that capturing such a promising newcomer was an important assignment. The Harmony and Rationality groups are celebrating their own supposed successes at the same time. Their happiness disappears when an unsettling rumor begins spreading through all three headquarters. Representatives storm into one another's rooms and demand to know who actually recruited Kunan. The meeting quickly turns into an exchange of insults about the recruiters and their appearances. Old rivalries flare up, tempers rise, and each faction insists that its own invitation was legitimate. What began as three private celebrations is now threatening to become an open conflict over one new student. The senior students gather to compare what happened. They had agreed that Strength would approach Kunan first, Harmony second, and Rationality third. Each representative confirms that she followed that order, yet Kunan told all three that he would join. Rationality even succeeded with a second approach after its first recruiter fell asleep in Kunan's service. The situation is unprecedented. No one can tell whether Kunan is serious, confused, or lying to everyone. Since arguing among themselves cannot provide an answer, they decide that the only solution is to confront Kunan directly. Elsewhere, a young woman confronts a dangerous group before it can reach a nearby village. She refuses to let the attackers pass and fights until their advance is stopped. Her strength earns praise worthy of the deputy leader of the Arakuma group, although she modestly says she still has much to learn. The battle ends only after the sun begins to set, allowing her to return home once the villagers are safe. The young woman is Mirika. When she arrives at her residence, her attendant Laura welcomes her and presents a notice from the Advanced Noble School concerning Mirika's final examination. Mirika knows that the decisive test has finally arrived. Laura also gives her Kunan's letter. Mirika enjoys reading about his experiments, including another attempt to make bacon, until she reaches the part about him gaining female friends. Her expression changes at once. Laura suggests that they are surely just school friends, and Mirika tries to convince herself that there is no reason to worry. But Kunan's cheerful wording leaves her visibly uneasy. Back at Kunan's residence, Rinko announces that she wants to prepare proper financial records. To manage his income and expenses, she needs every note connected to his purchases. Kunan admits that the money earned at school is simply thrown into a drawer. He has no receipts for the seeds, meat, and other materials he purchased, but he did record every transaction, because financial documentation was part of his noble education. That seems to solve the problem until he remembers that the notes are buried somewhere in his laboratory. His piles of research papers collapsed in an avalanche, and he never organized them afterward. Rinko orders him to find every record, even though sorting is one of his least favorite tasks. At school the next morning, Kunan greets the girls with his usual elaborate compliments. Hank rushes over carrying a newly invented bacon sandwich and warns Kunan to hide. Ria explains that the senior faction members are searching for him because accepting all three invitations has become a major incident. Kunan barely reacts before the recruiters find him. They announce that their leaders are waiting and take him away, while Hank follows with the new sandwich he still wants everyone to test. Even while surrounded by angry seniors, Kunan calmly eats Hank's sandwich and offers some to the ladies. They refuse and demand that he move faster, but he continues evaluating the food. The fish bacon has good texture, the salt level is balanced, and it no longer causes nausea. Fresh fish is difficult to obtain because Delasik is far from the sea, although traveling magicians sometimes bring seafood back for extra money. Kunan wonders whether freshwater fish could be raised locally. Someone suggests searching the library for existing research, and Kunan promises to help if the idea appears practical. He then allows his many fairy-like escorts to guide him toward the faction leaders. The group reaches an enormous castle located within the school grounds. Kunan marvels at the structure and says he will follow anywhere if a beautiful lady guides him, irritating his escorts even more. Inside, he is introduced to the three faction leaders. Vale Ka Kuntan leads Strength and apologizes for summoning a student who has not officially joined any faction. Luramet represents Rationality, while Shiro represents Harmony. Their unusual appearances fascinate Kunan, but the leaders make it clear that they brought him there to resolve the chaos caused by his answers. Instead of taking the accusation seriously, Kunan immediately asks Shiro to spend time alone with him. He senses a connection between her magic and his own water attribute, imagines that she must use wonderful spells, and invites her to discuss magic over tea. The others explode because his flirting created the problem in the first place. Lurman observes that reports describing Kunan as weak toward women were actually understated. Realizing that his attention follows whichever woman speaks to him, the leaders decide to let their female members handle the questioning. Kunan agrees to a long conversation as soon as tea is mentioned. Junbis introduces herself next and asks Kunan to address her by a friendly nickname. Kunan momentarily mistakes her unsettling presence for something inhuman, then quickly corrects himself. A strange aura leaks from her even while she smiles, making the meeting more frightening than his earlier encounter with Rinko. The pleasant conversation ends when Junibus directly asks which faction Kunan actually intends to join. Kunan can no longer distract everyone with compliments, and the room waits for a clear answer. Vale repeats the question and demands that Kunan choose. Kunan says he would love to answer that he will join the faction of the woman standing before him, but there is a problem. Many beautiful women invited him, and he cannot bring himself to select only one of them. His solution is exactly what caused the dispute. Kunan announces that he intends to join every faction. The leaders and recruiters are left speechless, as the episode ends on their stunned reaction. The faction leaders are stunned when Kunan announces that he intends to join all three groups. They question whether one new student possesses enough value to deserve such an unprecedented privilege. Kunan cannot promise that he does, but he declares that he will devote himself completely to becoming whatever the beautiful women expect of him. The men are far less impressed by his speech. They decide that Kunan must prove his worth through magic, and Kunan becomes enthusiastic only when a woman agrees to test him. A formal challenge is arranged between Kunan and senior students representing the three factions. News spreads quickly that the apprentice of Xion is about to fight several elite special class magicians. Students crowd around the arena because they cannot miss the chance to see whether the famous new student deserves his reputation. Reyes and Kunan's friends are worried, although Reyes reluctantly agrees that she can heal him if his own recklessness gets him hurt. Teachers also arrive to watch the commotion. Kunan flirts with one of them and asks for a parfait as a reward if he wins, earning an immediate warning not to pursue his teacher. Still smiling, Kunan enters the field carrying the magic ring he treats as a protective charm. The spectators recognize that every senior facing Kunan ranks near the top of the special class. Sandra is especially dangerous because she favors enormous spells but has poor control, creating a risk to everyone around her. Even so, Kunan's friends cannot imagine him losing. The rules are then explained. Each participant receives a simple magical barrier designed to block offensive spells. A fighter loses when the barrier breaks or when that person admits defeat. The faction members argue over who should attack first, but Kunan ends the dispute by inviting all four women to face him together. His confidence shocks the audience, while Reyes calmly says there is no problem as long as he survives because she can repair the damage afterward. Elsewhere in the school, staff members review the latest faction rosters and hear that the troublesome newcomer has caused another incident. Back at the arena, the seniors repeatedly call Kunan arrogant and ask whether he truly wants to proceed. Kunan confirms that he does. His opponents know that he has learned only 2 water spells and supposedly possesses no offensive magic, but his connection to Xion makes them wary of hidden tricks. The match begins, and instead of attacking directly, Kunan creates his familiar water spell while the 4 seniors hold their positions and study him. Kunan releases a red mist that spreads across the field. Some spectators recognize it as similar to a technique used during an earlier lesson, but the seniors assume the color is merely a bluff. Beneath the dramatic appearance, it seems to be nothing more than water produced by a basic spell. They remain cautious, expecting Kunan to use the mist as cover for another move. Then the moisture gathers overhead and falls as red rain. The seniors prepare to counterattack, but the liquid clings to their bodies. It is thick, sticky, and difficult to remove. Before any of them can complete a spell, the substance reaches their faces and mouths. Realizing they may soon be unable to breathe or speak an incantation, the women surrender, ending the match almost immediately. The audience cannot understand how 4 elite students lost simply because it rained. No one believes they deliberately threw the match, since losing to a newcomer while representing their factions would be humiliating. More importantly, the supposedly defensive barriers allowed Kunan's reign to pass through without resistance. Kunan confirms that the test is over and reassures everyone that the mess will disappear when he releases the spell. He then checks on his soaked opponents, calls them his mermaid princesses, and offers warmth as an apology. The women accept blankets but reject his more personal attempts at comfort. The leaders demand an explanation. Kunan reveals that the red rain was adhesive water, essentially a shower made from slime-like liquid. The color had no special function beyond making the effect easy to see. Once it coated the seniors, fighting back became dangerous because the liquid could block their mouths, stop their incantations, and interfere with breathing. Their decision to surrender was correct. The barrier failed because Kunan never used an offensive spell. He used an ordinary water creation technique with so little mana that the system did not recognize it as an attack. Kunan knew this weakness because he had fought Xion many times with the same type of barrier. The seniors are shocked to hear that Kunan once defeated Xion under those conditions. Kunan admits that he won only their first match. From the second battle onward, Xion attacked without waiting and crushed him completely. The experience taught Kunan that his tricks are most effective against someone seeing them for the first time. By watching, instead of attacking, the four seniors gave him exactly the opportunity he needed. Satisfied by both his creativity and his understanding of the rules, the leaders permit Kunan to belong to all three factions. Kunan celebrates the freedom to spend time with every lady, while everyone else marvels that a new student has achieved something never seen before. Before Kunan officially joins, the leaders order him to apologize to the seniors he embarrassed in front of the school. Kunan eagerly agrees because the defeated opponents include 3 women. When another name is mentioned, he asks whether that person is also female and becomes even more enthusiastic. Later, Hank, Rhea, and Reyes find him and demand details about the strange red rain. They are amazed that the faction dispute ended with Kunan receiving permission to join all 3 groups. Kunan acts modest, but the incident has already become the only subject anyone at school wants to discuss. The story then moves to Mirika on the day of her final examination at the Advanced Noble School. Her older brother insists on watching because this is an important day for the deputy leader of their group, even though Mirika says she can handle the test alone. When her name is called, she enters the arena and faces her opponent without hesitation. The exchange is intense, but brief. Mirika uses the strength developed through her recent training, wins decisively, and earns her brother's proud approval. After the result is announced, she promises herself that she will become a woman Kunan can be proud of, and silently asks him to continue working hard at magic school too. That evening, Kunan remains outside until the air grows cold. Rinko reminds him that dinner is ready and offers to prepare a fresh drink. Kunan asks her to take the milk tea to his room because he values anything she makes with affection, even though Rinko points out that it contains no actual tea. Kunan unexpectedly asks whether she ever cuts herself while using a kitchen knife. Rinko assures him that she is a professional and rarely makes such mistakes. His concern surprises her, but Kunan insists that kindness is simply part of being a gentleman. Kunan's thoughts are actually focused on Mirika. He begins another letter to his beloved fiancée after learning that she is transferred into the noble school's dormitory. He wants to congratulate her, yet he cannot stop worrying about the harsh training she may face. Mirika works until her body is exhausted and could easily be injured. Kunan supports her effort, but he hates imagining her in pain. He asks her not to push herself too far, and promises to send as many letters as necessary so she will never forget him. Kunan ends by saying that he has not forgotten her for even one day, and sends his eternal love. Mirika is deeply moved when she reads the letter. She realizes that Kunan worries about her just as much as she worries about him. Confident after her victory, she says that she has become strong enough to stand her ground even against a bear and cannot wait to surprise him when she returns. She would never forget Kunan because he is always in her thoughts. Then she continues reading. Kunan casually reports that he has made dozens of new female friends and even encountered a mysterious woman who seemed to seek his heart. He claims that learning about many women will help him become a gentleman worthy of Mirika, leaving his fiancée speechless at the terrible logic hidden inside his romantic letter. At school, Kunan is surrounded by the women of all 3 factions. He apologizes to Cassie for the earlier trouble and turns the apology into another lunch invitation. Other seniors immediately offer joint research instead. One wants to develop magic tools using knowledge. Kunan learned from Xian, another is interested in him because they share an elemental connection, and Sandra demands a rematch so she can erase the humiliation of losing. Their arguments grow louder as each faction tries to claim his time. Reyes finally interrupts with a concrete proposal. She is about to produce medicine from newly cultivated Shilra, and asks whether Kunan wants to document the process. He accepts at once and escapes the crowd by returning to research. The teachers confirm that Kunan has officially become the first student permitted to join all 3 factions. Some call him the greatest problem child since Xian, while others welcome the disruption as proof that school life will become more interesting. The invitations do not stop. Kunan is asked to assist with another unusual project involving a faction leader, and he eagerly agrees when a lady invites him along. Around him, rival students continue shouting and competing while Kunan moves happily from one experiment to the next, bringing the episode to its chaotic conclusion.